Hey everybody, and welcome to the latest installment of Unstoppable. I am your host, Kerwin, and today on this episode, I sit down with renowned digital strategist, keynote speaker, and media commentator Mark Cameron. Mark is actually the CEO of W3 Media. He's also a regular on the conference circuit, sharing his knowledge on customer experience and digital marketing strategies. If you're looking to understand more about the digital world and digital marketing, but most importantly, understanding the customer experience in all of this, which is dominant in everything, this is going to be an incredible podcast for you. Check it out, listen up, and get ready to learn. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mark Cameron from W3 Digital.
Thank you.
Mate, thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise, mate. You're a bit of a big deal. So for those people who perhaps don't know anything about you or W3 Digital, just give us a small snapshot on who you are and what you guys do there.
Right, so I'm CEO of W3, and we've been running since 2003. And really what we do, we focus predominantly on digital transformation and digital transformation consulting.
Yeah, right.
So we work, currently we work predominantly with corporates. So we're a Telstra innovation partner, and we work with sort of corporates all around the world, helping them move through different phases of digital transformation. And in summary, what that actually means is for most corporates going through that kind of transformation, what it actually means is the market's shifting fast.
Yeah. The
customers are getting more and more demanding, and we're trying to help them speed up their company so they can meet that demand and change course when the market shifts.
Right. And so what does that look like at a technological aspect? Like when you say digital transformation, what's the technology that drives that?
It's kind of so there's an underlying technology. So so you have your data, your CRM, you have all different kinds of kind of base technology. Right. Then you have the top level aspect of it, so the customer intimacy piece, so the bits that the customer interact with, and then of course you have your kind of more marketing and more kind of like content side of it. And so we kind of look at kind of the whole gamut of how that's actually intersecting, so how technology is intersecting with the customer.
Yeah, right.
And when we're talking about digital transformation, we anchor it around the customer. Okay. So how does the customer going to respond to it?
So the customer experience.
Yeah, fundamentally.
So you guys really look at integrating everything between the content interaction to the CRM to the e-commerce so that you're building data. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, fundamentally what we're looking at is how does the business meet the demands of a new market.
Right.
So if you think about where the space around digital or technology transformation has gone over the last, pretty much since the GFC, the first phase was, okay, we're in pain, we've got to cut cost. So it was mostly IT transformation really there.
Yeah, right.
So it was actually getting cost out of the business. Then it was, okay, we need to connect with customers in a new way. So that was really a lot about marketing automation and getting close to customers. And now the new phase, and this is where businesses are starting to move more and more, is actually where those two things intersect, and they find new business models and new revenue streams and new ways of actually engaging with customers.
Yeah, right. And so for maybe a medium-sized or a small-sized business that's listening to this, where would they be looking to find that intersection and to get that information to look at how they could be perhaps creating new revenue streams and new opportunities?
Yeah, I think this doesn't necessarily have to be confined to large corporates. I mean, any kind of business can think this way. And
it's almost like what you're doing is essentially what every small business is going to have to be doing in, like, whether it be 12 months to 3 years from now.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the corporates just happen to be the one that have the bigger budgets that can lead the way.
Yeah, well, the corporates are the ones that are feeling the pain.
Yeah, right.
So, particularly older businesses that where, they're starting to see maybe a change in the market, they haven't kept up with it. And what's happening is, a vacuum starting to form. And if they don't move fast enough, somebody's going to come and fill that vacuum. So either it's going to be a startup, it's going to be a brand from overseas with a whole bunch of private equity, or it's going to be, a new model from within Australia. We see that, consumer products businesses, for example, you see that happening with home brand. The supermarkets come in with a home brand strategy because those brands don't really have the connection with the customer and know how to shift and move as the customer's demand is shifting and moving.
Yeah, right. And so how are you noticing that brands differentiate in today's rapidly changing market? Because everyone seems to be, like, the innovation's strong. Technology is innovating at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
everyone is trying to innovate at the same time. How are you seeing differentiation starting to move through at this point?
Yeah, I think so. Innovation's an interesting term. I think some people are confusing innovation with technology implementation. I think, sort of implementing a CRM and doing some marketing and so on is good, but it doesn't necessarily differentiate you. I think what we're seeing is, the models that are really, really clear, moments of thought or really clear alignment to brand is where the big differentiation happens. So if you take case study I love talking about is when Nike was thinking through an element of their digital strategy, probably 10 years ago now. And they did have the option of focusing on data collection, segmentation, and then sending out more and more messages through automation to attract more customers. And fundamentally, many businesses have done that. The issue with that model quite often is it can just be a trap, because quite often you get sort of caught in the trap of just reporting on progress. And what happens there is they end up just getting in a cycle of creating smarter and smarter spam, really.
Yeah, right.
It's not actually making much of a difference.
Yeah.
So what did Nike do? So Nike said, well, our brand is not about selling shoes or selling clothes. Our brand is about performance. Can we help our customers perform better? And so they went through and started thinking about that. And what did they do? They invented Nike Plus, which was essentially a sensor in the shoe that helped track your running. And then it became a wristband. And then that gave birth to the whole fitness tracking sort of market. And then it became an app on your phone, and then became an app on your watch. And kind of where we imagine this goes is that probably in the very, very near future, I'll get up in the morning, go for a run, I'll put my headphones on, and Nike's voice will say to me, morning, Mark, I've got your personalized training regime ready for you today. This is what we're going to go do. And all of a sudden, it's a artificially intelligent personal trainer that's talking to me every day.
That makes so much sense. Are there any other great case studies like that you can refer to, other businesses that have really looked at their digital strategy and innovated in a way that is quite groundbreaking in that respect?
I think there's a lot of businesses doing elements of that. And you look at obviously you look at the software as a services businesses that have grown up in that space. They're obviously the ones that everybody points to. Obviously the Ubers and all those kinds of things, where it's they identified a gap in the market or what the market need was and really addressed that. And the technology enabled it, but it wasn't, people call it digital disruption. It was really the market. Digital disruption really is just customer dissatisfaction. So as soon as you start to address that, I think that's where the big change happens.
And what you guys really look at, from my understanding, and what you pointed out with the Nike case, it's the digital experience, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And the digital experience is about is it just about meeting the consumer where they're at, but is it also about providing an experience that also gives us more data to be able to meet them where they're at more efficiently and effectively at the same time?
I think it's going to be horses for courses. Whatever's right for that market, that brand. But fundamentally, if you can be thinking about what is something I can do for my customer that provides value ongoing. So I may have a product, but what is the service that goes along with my product? The digital service. Can I create community around my brand? What can I create? Can I have some kind of value? Can I get the people sharing information? Can I give them data back in some way? So for example, with the Nike Plus idea, the data around how fast their customers were running in their shoes and how far they were running in their shoes probably didn't exist. They created it and then gave it back to the customers immediately, saying, this is what we know about you, which helped the customer perform better, but it also gave them a lot more information. And you can pretty much guarantee now, with that level of information, they'll know exactly how long a pair of shoes lasts. They'll know that if you buy that pair of shoes, that they don't need to market to you the whole way through. They know that within sort of 2 or 3 week period that pair of shoes is going to be ready to throw away, and then they can talk to you about another pair.
Yeah, right. That's really intelligent. So how would a small or medium-sized business start to tap into that kind of insight to be able to market in that kind of a way?
So I think looking for the information in between the data. So obviously collecting information about your customers. So who they are, where they are, all those bits of information is important, as long as it's done in a transparent way. But trying to identify the piece of information that's valuable for you and valuable for them. If you can find that little piece of information, and it can be something really, really simple, then that's where that's where your spark of innovation will happen. That's where you can create a differentiator that nobody else has.
Do you think the way Nike, because it seems really interesting the way Nike has done this, like, it's almost like they've gamified data collection. Like they've created this competitive environment where people can race against themselves, race against their friends, their families, and everything else. But at the same time, they're willingly and wantingly providing enormous amounts of data that Nike can now use in order to remarket to them in different ways, whether it be, because I'm going to assume it doesn't just come down to the lifespan of the shoes, but it also could be the types of shoes, the styles of shoes, the types of training these people are doing, create all sorts of remarketing opportunities.
Well, adding product development opportunities as well. Those are product design opportunities. There'll be that kind of level of information gives them just a huge amount of leverage.
So how do we look at, as a small business owner or a medium-sized business owner, how should we analyze our digital experience? Are we just looking at every digital interaction, or is there a sequence that you go through when you're working with an organization to go, okay, if we're going to analyze our digital experience before we start to innovate it and maybe look at disrupting it, here's where we start and this is the flow that we go through?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we do is before we really think about anything to do with technology or digital data or any of those things, we really try and create focus. So we call it future state design. So what we're doing is working with the organisation to go, what does your future state really look like? Where are you now? How would you like to be engaging your customers? What does that really look like? And then start to ask big questions around the market. So, what may your market look like in a few years? What may artificial intelligence do to your business? What may a change in sort of global economics do to your business? So big questions that most people don't think about. Just ask them. We don't have to know it all, but what we're trying to do is get people to think differently about what that future state could be. And then when they're really sort of comfortable saying this is where we're heading, then we can start to talk about, okay, well, how do we get there? And that's where we start looking through the elements of, okay, well, what channels are right? Where should you focus? Because you can't do everything. You're better off sort of focusing on a few things and doing them really, 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 really well rather than trying to do everything, obviously.
And how much is social media playing a role in the digital experience now in the work that you are doing?
I mean, in some cases, a lot. In some cases, hugely. Some cases, not so much, depending on the type of business and where it comes into play. So, government organisations, huge amount. Organisations with public face, a huge amount. Organisations who are going through product transformation, very little sometimes.
And I guess one of the things I'm finding very interesting, everyone's got an opinion on social media as to, its place in business. But from what you're seeing right now, and how long have you been in the digital space?
Since the 90s.
Right. So you've been around since the beginning of the internet. Right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So since the birth. Okay. So you've seen it all. You've seen things come, things go. But what are some of the trends that you're now seeing in social media that a lot of people are missing that seem to be quite obvious?
Well, I think, to me, the big one is... And of course, there's been a huge amount of media about it, is what's happening with, the whole Cambridge Analytica, the data piece around that.
Yeah.
So that's to do with the emergence of, in the mind of the public, the emergence of, hang on, my data has value. And I think that's a huge shift that's starting to happen right now. And I think it's going to get bigger and bigger. So what that means is while the public was pretty much willing to give away lots and lots and lots of information for a long time, and to get sometimes really meaningless experiences, they're now starting to become much more discerning and much more demanding. So the value exchange going on there is going to get harder, but that's going to put pressure on businesses to spend more time creating truly valuable experiences, which I think is actually a very good thing.
I agree, because I look at the Cambridge, the whole debacle that's gone on with Facebook, and I sit in two beds, but the first bed I sit in is I actually like giving more data to Facebook as long as they use it in a meaningful way to create a more valuable experience for us. And I think this seems to be one of the things that people are missing. Yes, there was this anomaly where this data was used and it was harvested for political gain. But for the most part, my understanding, Facebook is using this data to customize the experience to create better user experiences, which is of value to us. Because most people use Facebook, typically because they're connecting with friends, they're connecting with brands, they're looking for information, they're watching videos. And ultimately, most people that I've heard get off Facebook say, well, I'm getting off Facebook. Why? Well, it's just not the same as it used to be. I'm not getting as much value from it as what I once was. And so, well, that's part of the deal, right?
Yeah.
We give value to these companies so that they can customize the experience, so that they can provide more value. So do you think that that there's the possibility at some point that there might be certain social media networks that will be looking at perhaps rebating their customers in a way to provide data just so they can customize the experience in order to create a better ad platform for advertisers?
I mean, quite possibly. I mean, I think the whole question of what happens with customer data and how it's going to be used, I think is a really interesting evolving space. I think, so you've got social platforms that have a huge amount of information about you, and obviously that's being used for advertising, and it's creating a huge amount of value. Then you've got other platforms that are starting to collect a huge amount of information about you as well, such as personal assistants, for example. So the digital assistants, trying to get smarter and smarter. They only really become valuable when they know a lot about you, and they can make predictive. They can start to predict what you might want or where you might want to go. That's when they become truly valuable. But the level of information that you have to give over is enormous.
So do you think we're going to see something like a Jarvis in our lifetime?
Yeah, totally. So we did some work with a large software company in the States a few years ago now. And one of the things we were being asked to do was look at what will happen with the emergence of consumer data and how that might change. And what we worked through was basically saying, and this has really played out over the last few years, was saying that that customer data over time really will become valuable when it's centered around the individual. So if you think about it, you probably have lots of data sitting inside many, many different data silos. So your loyalty cards, your credit cards, your social, all your different social accounts. If all of that information was coming together into one spot and it was providing value for you, then that information would be really, really, really valuable. And yes, Facebook has a huge amount and Google has a huge amount, but the two of them together would be more powerful. And the two of them together with all your credit card information, your loyalty card and everything else, even more powerful. The problem is if it's just about advertising, it's hard to trust it.
Yeah.
But if it's about helping you make better decisions,
becoming more efficient, more effective.
Yeah. So there was
making life easier.
There was a narrative that when we were doing that work, we did sort of the theory of it and sort of saying there's probably going to be a whole new market segment around a whole new industry around looking after customer data that doesn't exist at the moment. But we created a narrative around how that might look. And so we created a fictional character called Alice. And this is about sort of 5-6 years ago when we created this, and because we're trying to explain how this might work. So we created this woman called Alice, and Alice sort of lives in the near future, and she has a digital assistant, and that digital assistant only ever asks her one thing. So what do you want to do? So what do you want to do today, tomorrow, with the rest of your life? And it takes those requests and tries to help her make better decisions. So in this particular case, so Alice wakes up on a Monday morning, digital assistant says, "Morning, Alice, what do you want to do?" And she says, "You know what?" First of all, she says morning, but then she says, "You know what? Last week I worked late every night and I didn't really get out and do any exercise. So this weekend I'd love to, do some exercise. And last night I was sitting up in bed and I was looking at Facebook and I saw a bunch of my old school friends, and I'd like to hang out with them. But, they're all putting photos up of their holidays, and I don't really know how to get the conversation started. So if you've got any ideas there, let me know." And instantly the digital assistant said, "Well, last summer you played tennis a lot. Do you want to play tennis this weekend?" She goes, "Yeah, I'd love to." And he goes, "Well, that's good, because of your friends that you want to hang out with, here are the 3 that are currently playing tennis. Do you want to see if one of them wants to play with you?" And she goes, "Yep, sure." It then sends a message to all 3 of them. One of them says, "Yes, I'd love to play tennis with Alice this weekend." And then it automatically finds a tennis court between their 2 houses, books them in for Saturday morning, and they both go, "Awesome." But because Alice has then said, when it comes to tennis, I'm willing to hear from Nike, the digital assistant then says, "Hey, Alice, I've got a message here from Nike. Do you want to hear it?" She goes, "Yeah, I'd love it." And then Nike's voice comes on and says, "Hey, Alice, see you're playing tennis this weekend. Do you want a free virtual tennis lesson by Roger Federer through your Xbox?" She goes, "Yeah, awesome." So every night she gets home, she plays, she gets, Roger Federer sort of takes her through her forehand and her backhand and so on. And then Friday night rolls around, and then at the end of her lesson, so virtual Roger Federer says to her, "Hey, Alice, I think you've improved enormously over the last week. I think this tennis racket would be right for you. Click here to customize the color, and we'll have it 3D printed and waiting for you by the time you get to the court tomorrow morning." And I think that model, that idea of how we're connecting people's desires and wants and the things that will make them feel better as people with transactions, with the way, how that gets commercialized, I think that is starting to happen now, and I think that will move very, very quickly over the next few years.
How far off do you think we are? Did you see the movie Her?
Yeah.
You obviously would have frothed on that. You're like,
yeah. I saw that and I was like, "Oh, this is perfect." Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to have Scarlett Johansson in your ear, right?
Yeah.
But how far off do you think we are to having a level of sophistication in technology like that, where we literally have something in our ear where we can not only request and have that our life set up and structured that way, but have levels of conversation where there's actually an intelligent conversation going on that not only helps us make decisions, but actually supports us in the decision-making process through good conversation?
I think the technology, so the artificial intelligence aspect of it and the technology is getting there reasonably quickly. The bit that needs to change is, where does the data sit?
Yeah, okay.
So where does all my information
Do we
sit?
need to surrender the desire for privacy at the highest level in order to really indulge in this level of sophistication?
I'm unsure. I think that's possible. That's one possibility. I think another possibility is there is a whole new market category that's created, which
security and regulation.
Yeah, well, just looks after your information and shares it with businesses how you choose to use it. So, there might be, Nike says, "I want to talk to Alice in this way," and you just get a small sliver of information so that interaction can happen,
right.
And then it gets cut off when you say it gets cut off.
Okay, right.
So it's unsure yet, but it will be interesting to see how that evolves.
And do you see much in the startup space where businesses are starting to evolve with this technology and they're at the stage where we've got early stage, we've got the software, we've got some hardware, because we're also seeing now with the innovation of these translator earbuds. Where people are putting these earbuds in and they're actually having conversations with people, from different countries, and it's doing live translation. Is that a marketing hype right now, or have you actually witnessed that technology is at a level where that's actually quite functional?
I think a lot of it's still kind of hype at the moment, but it's getting smarter and smarter. I mean, the more
we use it.
Yeah, the thing about AI and machine learning and so on, the more we use it, the better it gets.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's, you look at what's happening with Amazon Alexa, for example, and, the biggest, they did an update recently, a couple of months ago, and that update, what it did was actually just added pauses and breaths. So, so all of a sudden Alexa's sort of thinking and pausing and taking little breaths and so on to try and make it feel more natural. And because of that, the more natural it sounds and feels, the more people are going to tell it, the more they're going to trust it. And so you'd imagine the level of information that Amazon's collecting about people is just astronomical.
Yeah, and building every day.
Yeah. So
apart from like the personal assistant, where do you see the next greatest disruption that we're going to come through when it comes to AI, artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, so AI is massive, obviously. It's a big area. So, I mean, you've got the service industry, which in many ways is going to be very, very highly disrupted. Medical industry, so we're doing work in the medical space at the moment, which is looking at when does artificial intelligence intersect or actually supersede a human's ability to do diagnostics and so on. That's happening really reasonably quickly. And then what does that mean? Like, how do organizations change to take advantage of that, as opposed to put their head in the sand and hope it doesn't happen? So I think that's one big area. There's going to be a lot. I mean, I think AI, in terms of what it will do to the job market as a whole, I think is just astronomical. I don't think there's any area that won't be impacted. And
when do you think we're going to start feeling the effects of that?
I think we probably already are.
Yeah.
Early stages. If you have a look at, so if you think artificial intelligence as a continuation of analytics and automation. I mean, you have a look at what's happened around the world really since the GFC. There are, in many ways, there's a lot of jobs created, but there's been a lot, sort of fewer full-time jobs. There's a lot of part-time jobs. Wages, in many cases, have sort of stagnated in many areas, and a lot of that has to do with automation. And so, yeah, I mean, so that's why there's a lot of discussion around things like universal basic income and all that kind of stuff. What do we do?
Do you think that's something that we'll see in our lifetime as well?
Well, Canada, I think so. The Prime Minister of Canada, I think this week announced that universal basic income was going to be part of their platform going forward.
Yeah, right. That's big.
It's big. I don't know if Finland tried it and said they weren't that impressed with it.
Right.
But they tried it with, sort of randomly in the population, so not universal. I don't know if it will work or not, but be interesting. It's interesting that people are thinking about it. And
considering we're going to start seeing more and more innovation and more implementation in the AI space. Again, I think a lot of small to medium-sized businesses see that's something that's going to be out of their reach for a very long time. What aspects of AI do you think will be within, apart from basic automation, because we've got basic automation that's available to us in different technology, software, CRM, email marketing. But what types of AI do you think will be within reach to a small to medium-sized business owner that will help them with efficiencies and service, maybe in the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
So I think a lot of the stuff they may be doing in terms of a lot of the administrative elements, such as contract writing or contract reviews, so a lot of the legal side of it, a lot of the accounting side of it, they'll probably find particularly if they're already on the platforms like Xero and so on, they'll probably find there are artificial intelligence add-ons to that come very quickly, that reduce administrative overhead inside their businesses quite quickly. And then there'll be artificial intelligence sort of insights developed off the back of that. So looking at if you've got a large enough audience, looking at how your audience may be shifting. So rather than thinking about broad segments, but based on day to day, how is our audience shifting and thinking and changing their ideas, and how might we respond to that shift in the market?
You talk about the 4 stages of development that companies move through when delivering value for customers. Can you explain what that's all about?
There's these different stages where, so this is part of the sort of the experience economy thinking. So you sort of got these different stages that, as a organization moves away from, so I suppose the idea of building commodities, they then move into into products quite often. So they have products, and they start thinking about well, how do we sell a thing? Then it starts becoming about the service. Okay, so then what is the service that sits around the thing that we have? Or
so stage 1 is the thing, is it?
Yeah, well, stage 1 quite often can be just a very base level commodity idea.
Right. What's the commodity?
Yeah. So what's the commodity?
Product, service.
Yeah. So moving through a product, moving through a service, and then moving through to the experience. There's actually a 5th area which is transformations. But what that is what's the service that goes along with our product, or what's the service that we can offer the market? And every single one of these steps you move through are harder to do but higher margin. They produce they produce more profits basically. Then you move through into the experiences, where a lot of the businesses are at now. So they're talking about customer experience is the new battleground. There's a lot of information out there that's sort of showing that businesses that invest in customer experience are outperforming the ones that don't by a long margin, particularly the ones that are sort of large sort of listed businesses. And then the next phase is moving into transformations. And what that looks like is, so a business that sells a transformation actually sells you changing in some way. So, if you're selling a product that helps somebody lose weight, for example, and there is an offering all the way around that, and there's training all the way around that, that's a transformation. You're selling that transformation. And I think, if you're thinking about that as a small business, how do you move up that value chain as quickly as possible, I think is really, really interesting. So there's always pressure from the market to be pulled back down. So the market's always trying to pull you down and commoditize the market you're in. But if you're constantly pushing up that line saying, okay, well, we're selling a service that changes people's business or their lives, or we're selling a transformation that fundamentally changes the way that they are, then you're always going to be, sort of leading in some way.
And I guess you talk about companies that need to deliver experiences that are structured. How do we start to deliver experiences that are structured in a way to deliver values? But let's say we're a product business, okay, and you're talking about moving up through the stages, which is moving into more of the service territory, which has higher margins.
Yeah.
How does a business that's typically structured, okay, more product orientated, how do they start moving into perhaps having a service aspect to their business that enables them to deliver high levels of value that complement the product, that gives them higher margin when they've never even contemplated it before? Like they sell hardware, or they sell bibs and bobs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where really spending time understanding who your customer is. So there's probably terms, there's terms that float around the market called, like design thinking or service design, user experience design. What that's about, a lot of those are about, is helping the organization develop, first of all, empathy for the customer. So creating real strong empathy for who the customer is, and understanding their needs. When you understand their needs, so I'm selling a pencil. Okay, so fundamentally I'm going to try and sell a pencil. So here are all the different ways that I can sell a pencil, and I'm then other people come into the market and try and sell a pencil. So you then just go, well, I'm going to make my pencil cheaper, and then they make it cheaper, and all of a sudden you're cutting your margins, it's getting cheaper.
Race to the bottom.
Yeah. So, but then if you, rather than say I'm going to make it cheaper, you actually say, what I want to try and do is make it more expensive, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a service to it. So why do my customers buy pencils? Do my customers buy pencils to draw, or do they use it to write into certain pads? Like, what are they using it for? How can I help them perform that task? It's the old idea of people don't buy a drill, to own a drill. They buy a drill, first of all, to make a hole, but then they buy that drill to make a hole so they can hang a picture, or whatever it is. So what's the end point that they're trying to get to? What's the challenge that's sitting around your product? Then that's when you can build the service around it and actually charge more, because people value it more. And then if you can then move that into the next phase, which is how might this change their life, then you can charge an absolute premium for it.
So how did you get into doing this, out of curiosity?
So my career started in, so when I first left school, I started in advertising, found that pretty interesting.
So you've got a marketing background?
Yeah,
advertising background.
Yeah. But very quickly, so in the 90s, went to a couple of different, so a technology company, and it was more of a startup, and then a digital agency in New Zealand, which we would end up doing quite a few big government websites and so on.
So creative, was it?
It was creative and strategy, and so I mean at that stage it was really the beginning of the internet. So you kind of people were doing everything really.
Yeah, right.
There was no clear roles, I suppose. So I was doing that up until 2001 when I moved to Australia, and then 2003, so I was doing freelancing at that point. Then 2003, joined the company I'm with now. 2007, took it over, restructured it, remodeled it, and then we took it through a few different phases into sort of where it is now. But as the market has evolved, we have evolved. We've constantly been thinking, how do we move up the value chain? How are we having the conversations that shape strategy, that shape corporate strategy, that help the business change in a meaningful way?
Are you finding that you're having to lead the charge in many ways to almost be able to demonstrate some of the things that you're recommending to the clients that you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, within reason, but yeah. I mean, I think, we have to a certain degree. And I imagine
the space you're in, it's quite fast moving.
Yeah.
It's highly competitive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned about growing the business that you're in the current times that we're in right now?
It's a hard one. I think, constantly reevaluating your focus, I think is really, really important. and really, spending a lot of time trying to assess where the market is shifting. That's probably one of the most vital elements. And it's probably not getting too caught up in one particular model. So, I think there's a lot of conversation around, being nimble, being agile, those kinds of things. But really, again, what does that mean? It's allowing the organization, or giving the organization an ability to shift as the market shifts, and to define focus and specialization as you go through those phases. So that's been kind of our biggest.
How many guys on your team?
There's 18.
18 on your team?
Yeah.
And so as the CEO, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned about leading your team?
Probably, it's the biggest one. It's not all about me. Look, and that's a challenge. It's always a challenge. Leading as opposed to managing.
Yeah.
Obviously leading from the front, being out there, being the visible face, reevaluating and rethinking about the values, thinking about why people want to join the organization, and particularly, we've got, a core team, which is sort of the 18, and then we've got a lot of contractors and so on that we work with as well. So we've got to try and think through how that works. We've been through a phase where we were kind of probably more of a agency model. So everybody was in the business and they were there and present. We could talk to them all the time. And now we're much more of a consulting model where people are out embedded with customers, and they're not in the office all the time. So thinking through how we manage that culture, that communication, those elements on a day-to-day basis is always a challenge. But it's a challenge that's fun to do.
You enjoy what you do?
Yeah, absolutely.
And by having so many people embedded into other businesses, I would assume that would give you a lot of experiential data, and you'd getting a lot of information flowing back into the hub of your business. And with all that information, and with where we're at right now, with where technology is meeting value and experience, what are the biggest mistakes that you're seeing businesses make right now that you maybe even have made yourself?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake that we see in the market is where people confuse buying technology with innovation. As I think I mentioned that before. So, the way I can contextualize that is I think so. After the GFC, there was a lot of the world was in a huge amount of pain. Look at England and so most of Europe and particularly the United States. We were doing work over there, and in the United States, they were talking a lot about how the shareholders were losing confidence, and they might become a takeover target. There was all this sort of panic going on in the market generally, and while so what they were saying is we have to start innovating, we have to do new things, we have to work out how this is going to work, we have to do a whole lot of stuff, and they knew full well that a lot of those things would fail, but they were willing to do that to find the change that was going to happen. And so a lot of those businesses have been through that change, and now Australia's trying to catch up, because at that same point, there were we were talking to businesses in Australia, and there was a much more of a conservative mood, because Australia's economy was doing pretty well. We had mining, things were okay, and the rest of the world looked really scary. So there was sort of a lack of willingness to sort of invest in new things, do new stuff. So what happens is that businesses then say, well, we need to catch up. Or we didn't realize all this competition was going to happen through e-commerce. We didn't realize social media was going to have this impact. So we need to catch up. And so what that does is it creates quite often a behavior where people think they can not only catch up, but they can leapfrog ahead. And they think that buying software or tools will do that, without realizing the organization has to actually go through pain and failure and do all these things and try lots of things in order to get to that point. And I think that's, so at one level, the market side, so the big end of the market, that's what's going on. So big software implementations that sometimes go right, but quite often don't. And then I think that's created a trend all through the market, all the way down the market, where people are looking at, what's the software tool I can buy that's going to fix all my problems? And I think that, and I think it's really started to change recently. So the idea of, the different techniques that can be used to spend a lot of time understanding your customer and really understanding the problem that you're trying to solve. So spending more time on the problem than you do on the solution. That's probably the space that people need to think about. What are the techniques I can use to understand the problem in great clarity so I have complete confidence in the decisions I'm making, rather than trying to jump into solutions too quickly because I'm worried about the next 2 months or the next 3 months.
And that's something that we see. I think we see that across the board, where there are so many people that try to sell first, diagnose later. Like shoot first, ask questions later. But something I'm noticing, and I don't know if you're noticing it, you might be noticing it more where you are, but I'm starting to notice a little bit in my space that I'm playing, which is a small to medium sized place. Once upon a time, there was no software tools available. And so in order for you to have, automation or software advantages, you had to develop it yourself. And then out came a lot of tools. A lot of businesses came together. Salesforce is one, Infusionsoft is another. All these tools came together, Xero, et cetera, to make our lives easier. But it's almost like it's reached a crux point now where businesses, as a result of that, have become more efficient, but they've also become a little bit more sophisticated in some ways. What I'm curious to know is, though, are you starting to see, we've gone from people developing their own software to now buying off-the-shelf software, but I'm starting to see in certain industries, businesses going back to the customization of software to meet their specific needs. Now, is this just something are you seeing this in any level where you are at right now?
I think that's a sign of the maturity of the market. So you've got... And it's a good sign. So if you think about those 3 phases I was talking about before, where first of all, businesses were looking at taking cost out. So how can I use automation and technology to remove costs from the business? Then how can I use automation and technology to connect with customers more effectively? So to basically fill the pipeline and, do the marketing side of it. Now what they do, and all of those things that, initially were custom because there weren't enough tools, and then the market became mature. So then it was, so I could just find things to do that. And that's where the market is for both of those 2 phases now, where it's essentially you can go and run a process, an RFP process or whatever it is, and find tools to fix all of that. It's that bit in the middle, which is, okay, how do we design something that helps us connect with our customers that nobody else has? What is our little bit of magic? And that kind of almost has to be bespoke, particularly at this point in time, because that's your IP. The other stuff, so the marketing side of it is the techniques and the methodologies are pretty well understood now. You can find the skills there. You can run those programs. You can automate a lot of it. The cost out exercise of it is very well understood. That's a very mature space. But that bit in the middle, which is where are we finding the magic that makes customers choose us over anybody else? That's where the kind of value will be created.
So I was talking to Pete Williams about this last week from Deloitte. I don't know if you know of Pete Williams.
Yeah, I know Pete.
So he was talking about with these new innovations where we are creating these software tools that help us to connect with our customers more effectively. He's saying now that he thinks everything that we develop now should have a social element to that. That enables us to connect, but also enables our customers to be able to connect as well. Are you in the same kind of thinking as well?
Oh, without a doubt.
He was even referring to creating social elements within things so that teams can actually have that social connection as well, to be able to communicate effectively and efficiently within systems.
Yeah, and I think that makes a huge amount of sense.
Yeah.
I think the more communication, the more connectivity that we have with inside pretty much everything we do, the better it's going to be, and the more sticky it's going to be. You think about any software tool, it's almost meaningless until you put your information in it. And if you put, kind of basic, sort of bland information, well, you might get value out of it. But if you put emotional information into it, so, the connectivity with your team and you're talking to people where all those emotional connections are happening, then you'll value it more. So, you've got kind of that rational and that emotional, they need to work together at all times.
So if there's one piece of advice that you'd give business owners that you could leave them with, say, okay, here's a practical piece of advice, I think regardless of what stage you're in business, this is something you need to consider, what would it be?
My advice would be look at something like design thinking. So look at how might you and your team or you and your organization find a way to connect with your customer in a new way, or find a way to define a problem that you are looking at in a new way. rather than sort of thinking through, how might I create a digital strategy and all those things. I mean, all of that's very important. But I think if you can find just one piece of magic, one little thing that you hadn't seen before that your competition hasn't seen, or that your market is basically screaming out for but nobody's addressing, that can fundamentally change your business. So I would, so there's lots of techniques and tools out there to help do that. As I said, design thinking is one. And really, really worthwhile trying to get your head around how they work, because they're having a very, very big impact on the business community.
For people who want to find out more about Mark Cameron, where can they go to check you out and find more information and even connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So you can connect with me via my company website, so w3.digital, or you can connect with me on Twitter, so Mark R. Cameron. Or you can look me up on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Mark, thank you so much for coming in. There's an enormous amount of wealth of information that you've provided us. Thank you so much.
No, my pleasure. Glad I could be helped.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.
There you have it, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Unstoppable with me, your host, Kerwin Ray. And do me a favor, don't forget to drop me a review on iTunes. Would love to hear what you think. I love reading what you guys have to say, and your reviews make sure we keep creating killer content just like this. If you want to stay up to date with me and all my movements, please jump onto the website kerwinray.com, and also check us out on social media at Kerwin Ray.